Well, apparently we're now live. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Richard Vobes, a Bald Explorer, and this is a Bald Explorer live, not to be confused with the other show that I do live, which is the Vobe Show, which is very different matter. Now, I shouldn't need my keyboard. Yes, this is live. I'm in my studio, and I hope that you can see and hear me all right. This is always a bit of a funny old thing. So perhaps before we go any further, you could just let me know if you can hear me. This is a very relaxed format that I'm doing. I've moved into the studio, which I normally use for my other show, which I do, which is the Vogue Show. But as you will see, I've just rearranged the lights somewhat so that there's a slightly darker and more concentrated focus on myself, not because I'm particularly egotistical or anything. It's just I want to differentiate between the crazy anarchic show that we call the Vogue Show, which is on a completely different channel, and I know there's going to be a crossover of people who watch the two. So that's really what that's about. I can see the comments, which is great, but first of all, it would be grand if you could just let me know that you can hear me, because I had to sign in on a different account doing this live stuff. I have in my teapot tonight here, just to show you this lovely teapot that was a gift from the lovely Lisa Fox, otherwise known as Rammy Boo. And it's got a number of different creatures on there. I hope you can see that. We've got foxes, we've got squirrels, there's an owl on one side, there is a pheasant. Turning it around very carefully, I'm actually balancing it on a very narrow bit of wood. The wood is there to act as a book lifter, I suppose. So we've got a squirrel there, a fox, and a peasant. Peasant? I don't think there's any peasants. Loud and clear. Thank you very much, Audrey. That's marvellous. So tonight on the Bald Explorer, there's a few things I just wanted to sort of connect with the audience live, because I know it's a different audience than the other show that I do. Have a few things to talk about. I've got some excerpts from books that I want to read. I'm just sort of trying to find out what works in this format, really. It's a much more gentle format than the Vogue show that I do. I will try not to keep referring to that, because a number of people don't watch that or don't even know it exists, so it's kind of irrelevant. These are all... I love books. I'm a great lover of books. I don't think people read enough these days. We consume through our phones, our laptops, our tablets, and big televisions as well, of course. And we watch a lot of this sort of rubbish live stuff. And which is good, because that's the way of the world, and why shouldn't we? But there's also books. I think books are great because you have concentrated wisdom. Now, you may not agree with the things in the books, and some of them are a bit out of date and what have you, but they are basically people's thoughts that have been crystallized into words. And I think that's a very meritorious operation, because when you write, we can think of things, we can have thoughts in our minds, and we know what we're thinking. But when you actually have to express that and have a conversation with somebody, or try and get somebody else to understand what you're talking about, you have to sort of crystallize that and put it into some form of communication, which we call words. And that's where I think books are really good, because they do that. And for somebody like me, who makes my videos and wanders about the countryside trying to interpret what I see, and trying to also add something of interest and of value to it, one has to practice that waffling and making sense, if you see what I mean. And books are very useful for that. Also, they can be very entertaining. So I thought we'd have a read of that. So just to see who we've got out there, we've got J.W. Harville, who's asking, are we live? Got the lovely Julia, who's also out there checking that I don't make any faux pas, which is great. Marriott Genealogy, Audrey Forbes Hamilton, Tanya Allison, good evening to you. We also have Turin, all cool. I tell you, it is cold outside, but it's cool in here. I do have the fire on in my front room, and I have my wood burning stove, which is a literal stove for cooking on, the Essie in the kitchen. That is lit as well. Fiona Cooper, hello to you. Nice to see you. Judith, another show. Yes, I know it's it's cold, isn't it? It's cold outside. What else are you going to do? We have Daniel, who is out there. John Berger, hello to you, John Berger. Thank you for that very kind offer to Stanley, by the way, my son, about putting him up. I do hope he gets over there. It will really broaden his mind, which is great. So I've got a number of books. I'm just going to sort of read little passages, so like 1 or 2 minutes of those. This is very lightweight format. This isn't anything terribly exciting. And I've just got some other bits and bobs of stuff that I want to share with you and get your ideas with. I'll start with first of all, I'm going to pour myself a cup of tea. And today I have some of this tea that was sent to me by the Tea and Coffee Company in Pluckley, supposedly the most haunted village in England. Must go back and explore how haunted it is, which would be good. Daniel, I'm going to ask you not to spam the chat room, if that's all. I did get your email, and if you saw, you would have seen I've replied to it, so probably best to check that. The tea I've got here, I'm going to need one of these, a tea strainer, because this is a Christmas fruit tazine, it's called. So, and it's lumpy. So actually, I wonder if I can show you how lumpy it is. Here we go. Because I do have, I have the ability here in the studio with the webcam. If I do that, of course it steams up, doesn't it? That is typical. It steams up. Hang on, if I do that a bit higher, you can maybe see the lumps in there now. That's some of the fruit that's in there doing its thing. We do all this craziness on the Phobe show generally, so I can show you pouring out the tea. You know, hang on, I need to put the lid back on. Let's try and get that on. There we go, and use the strainer. And out it comes. It's a nice pink sort of juice. Going to need that because I'm going to be doing a bit of talking. Oh look, the spout has got some little deposits in there. Anyway, shove that to one side. So I was listening to the radio today. I went out for a walk around, I think it's pronounced Opham. I was the Opham. Some people might say Offham, Offham, near Lewes in West Sussex. And I was listening to the radio, and there was a woman. It all sounded a little, it was Radio 4. Sometimes Radio 4 can sound a little bit up their bums, really, a bit too arty in some places. And there was this woman who she had this job title, and I can't remember. I wish I could remember it exactly. It was something like writer in residence in a forest, basically. I can't remember exactly what it was. And she was waffling about how she had spent a year in a forest. She'd been paid, I think, by the Forestry Commission, and at the end of it, she was there to write and produce a body of work with poems, essays, stories, and observations, and what have you. And the interviewer was quite amazed that A, there was a position for that, and B, that she got paid, and actually that presumably it got paid reasonably well, because there was quite a lot of people who went for the audition. Daniel, I'm going to knock you out if you keep typing any old nonsense, Daniel, because you're spamming the chat room, and it's not nice, and I can just block you. I don't want to, so please, can you restrain yourself? It's not fair on everybody else. Anyway, so this woman became this thing, and I thought, golly, and the interviewer said, well, what did you do what did you do for that year? 365 days. And it wasn't really clear. She sort of glossed over it a bit. And she went on about how she sort of, what's the word? They call this thing bathing in the forest now, don't they? But she didn't use that term. She would use a much more ethereal sort of term about, she absorbed the forest. And I thought, what, for 365 days? And how long, I wanted to know, how long were you in the forest? Were you in there just for an hour a day? Did you have another job? Or whatever? Because 365 days in the forest would produce some work. Where did she camp in the forest? Or was it this one forest? Or was it a number of forests? Anyway, I just kept thinking this was quite a bizarre idea. And of course, I thought it's a shame it wasn't on video. And then I thought, oh, that's an idea. But rather than do a year in a forest, which would bore the pants of everybody, even a month in a forest would probably bore the pants of everybody. I thought a week. What would you come up with if you were in a forest or a woodland for a week? I mean, there's a difference between, I should maybe just make the difference for those that don't know, that there's a difference between a forest in what we call in the UK a forest and woodland. Woodland is strictly land that is with trees in it, but a forest isn't necessarily mean it's all trees. It can be heathland, and there could be few trees, but some trees, and it's a large space. It's from the French, isn't it? Don't ask me to pronounce that, but it can combine heathland and woodland and open land and sort of grazing land for deer and that sort of thing. So it's not all thick set trees, not like a jungle. And so I thought in a week, 7 days in a forest would be quite interesting, because if you were making 7-10-minute videos, if you're spending that much time concentrating and thinking about it, and the time you're not filming and you're reading about and doing some research and maybe getting some interviews, you could do all sorts of just a speciality thing. You just focus in for 1 week on one project. And then I thought, of course, you could repeat this. And actually, in many ways, I've already done some of this. Lovely Julia and I went for a week on a canal boat, and that was very successful. And I thought, well, yeah, that maybe for the future of the Bald Explorer, one should do more of these focusing on something for a week, for a duration, rather than, as is, a very sporadic sort of hodgepodge of videos. Now, it may be that people quite like the fact that they never know what they're going to get next. What will pop up on the Bald Explorer timeline? 1 minute I might be out with Mark English around a village in Surrey, or I might be with Matthew Holdsworth following the Green Sand Way, or I might be with Kevin Hall, I might be with the lovely Julia, it might be something on the inside, I might be reading a bit from a book, or it's interesting. It's very difficult when you produce stuff, and a lot of the time it's what can I do? I've got to get a video out. Sometimes it is that panic, got to get a video out. So but it would be nice to concentrate a little bit on that sort of thing. I just want to go in here and just see if I can. Just bear with me 1 second. I just want to see if I can pop somebody out. There's got to be a way. I'm going to work out how to do it. Anyway, let me have a sip of this. That's very nice. It's a Christmassy fruits of the forest thing. Anyway, so that was my thoughts. I'd be interested in your thoughts on any of that. A week in a wood sounds fantastic. There we are. Andrew Norris says, I knew Andrew would appreciate it, and it would be good to be able to camp in the woods. Not just have a Airbnb or something. Certain miles away. The point would be to try and produce a concentrated series of videos. I mean, a lot of what I do is quite light-hearted. and sort of very light and easy to watch. But it would be nice to sort of put things under a microscope and really, it wouldn't have to be 7 videos. There could be more videos. I mean, I'm just thinking you could go through a wood. One might be just looking at the insects underneath the leaves, underneath the leaves, underneath the leaves, underneath the trees, or just looking at how trees naturally break down and rot, or looking at the fungi in a woods, or looking at the canopy, you know. And over a week, you could concentrate on all these separate things. It wouldn't just be simply walking through and going, oh, there's an ash tree, there's an oak tree, there's another ash tree. Oh, was that a squirrel? No, I'm talking about something a little bit more in depth that would be more immersive. I think that's the word I'm trying to find. More immersive, that you'd be living in this wood as part of the wood for a week. Now, maybe that a week is not long enough to really do it justice, but what I don't want to do, of course, is to bore the pants off the audience. And it would be an experiment, and it would be interesting to see if it worked. Mickey says take a compass because it's easy to get lost. Absolutely. Fiona says that she lives near Ashdown Forest. Ed Loud says, didn't realise this was on. Oh, yeah, this is just so that those people who tuned in and may be a bit mistaken, this is the Bald Explorer Live, as opposed to the other show I do, which is the more sort of light-hearted comedy show. So I'm in my studio. You can see I've made it a bit darker. Wiltshire Man says, I'm Wiltshire born, Wiltshire bred, thick in the arm and thick in the head. I love it. I love it. Hit the 3 buttons by his name and hide timeout or ban. Oh, right. Okay. Hit the 3 buttons. Oh, yes. Here we go. The 3 buttons. Oh, yes. Here we go. Hide this user on the channel. Put user in timeout. Remove. Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much. Right. Okay. Daniel, I'm going to keep an eye on that. But thank you very much. That's I've learned so, you know, if there was nothing else, I have learned now how to deal with that, because I nearly said going forward, and I have said going forward. It's just one of my pet hates, because that's what corporate people say, and I'm not a corporate man. But in the future, hopefully, the Bald Explorer and lives like this, which I'd like to do more of, will build. And unfortunately, what will happen is we'll get more trolls or people who misbehave, and it would just be handy to have a way to deal with them. And thank you so much for that. So that's very kind of you. Or even, yes, Andrew Norris, or even have a look at the lichen or lichen. I say lichen ordinarily. Try and discover some rare plants or insects so the planners can't build houses on the land, says Patrick. I like that idea. You see, this is very much why chatting to the audience is a brilliant thing, because I read all the comments and I try to answer all the comments. You know, sometimes there's on the YouTube videos, on the videos I'm talking about, sometimes there's only so many ways that you can say, I'm glad you liked the video, or thanks very much for watching, or whatever. There's only so many ways. Whereas this, of course, is a much more conducive way just to sort of thrash a few ideas around, play about. You know, I don't have to implement anything that happens here. It's just we're just hanging out, as they say. Daniel is. I'm just going to stick him on timeout now, I think. There we go. I don't know. I don't know what that does, but let's hope it does something interesting. Robert says, oh, he was born in Wiltshire, but was less than 1 year old when I moved away from there. Ah, bless, you know. Where are you now, though? That's the thing. Okay, just going to have a little sip. So, last year... Was it last year? I can't remember. I went to the Forest of Dean, and that was fascinating. It's funny how you have ideas of places before you go to them. When I was much younger, in my 20s, now I'm embarrassed about this, but when I was in my 20s, I went to Scotland for the first time, took a theatre show up there and performed. But I had this stupid notion, a very cliche notion, that most of the Scots would be walking about in their kilts. And that they would be eating haggis. I don't know. I was 20 when I thought this. Not 10, which would be understandable, but 20. That was most stupid, because you go through life and you learn things. Where was I going with that? It's funny how you... yes, I've lost my thread there. I was going to say something, but what was it? When you... I can't remember what I was going to say now. Dan World says, have you walked around Winchester? If you haven't, you must. It's lovely. Yeah, Winchester, I have been to Winchester. You've got a lovely statue of Arthur at one end, and then you've got the lovely arch, haven't you? The archway, and then you've got the round table in... What is it in? It's not the Abbey, is it? It's not an Abbey. It's a very important building. That helped to remember what it's called. So that's yeah, no, I have. And I haven't done it on video, though. Those are the sort of things that would be great to have somebody to take me round, because they would know the area. And I think it just helps when somebody can say, well, that's been such and such, and that was built over then, and this was used for this, and they've moved that 10 times. Well, rather than me just going, oh, that's a nice old building, and that's over there, or trying to interpret it and making it a bit naff. So that would be really good. David Keel says Eartham Woods has a bothy in it, or bothy. Is it bothy? But that wouldn't be wild camping. Has many paths too. Well, now, yes, I wouldn't necessarily want to be... It depends how you describe wild camping. What I would like is permission to be in this wood for a week. So whoever owns the wood could say, yes, you can stay there. Now, I would be making videos, so I would want a laptop. I would probably need somewhere to charge up, have access to electricity, or to charge my batteries. Or even if I couldn't do the editing there, if we agreed that that wasn't the thing, that somebody would take my batteries and my memory cards each day, and well, they wouldn't have to do that. They could just take my batteries, charge them up, and at the end of the day, and bring them the next day, so I could carry on filming. I could have my laptop just so I could move files onto a hard drive. That could be quite work. And then I could make my individual videos, but do a behind the scenes. But again, if one had some form of electricity, and I suppose you could have a generator, couldn't you? But I wouldn't want that whirring away, disturbing the wildlife. But if you could have a generator far enough away, and internet connection, and a couple of lights, we could do some lives as well. And it would be great to do those from different locations in this woodland. I mean, this might all be pie in the sky, but it would be lovely. And then whatever works in that environment would be great to repeat that in different, not necessarily woodland, but different places. And I'm not quite sure where else that would work appropriately. Well, up on the Downs, for example. I was on the Downs today walking around, and you can only take in so much. Robert says, I live in the most beautiful county in England. I know, I've been up there. It's lovely in Cumbria. Fiona says a cathedral. I live in the Chichester, Staffordshire border, says Robert. Vivian Edwards says, I was born in Wiltshire, then adopted as a baby and moved south, now live in Horsham. Oh, blimey, in Horsham. I used to live in Horsham, and now it's a real... Sorry about that swallowing. It's a real commuter place, and all those house building, and that house building that's going on to the north there with nearly 3,000 houses that's just about to go up over the next 15 years is rather worrying, really. Dan's World... hello to you. Mickey Stevens says, were you thinking about forests in Scotland? I wasn't. I hadn't really pinpointed where it would be. And Vivian Edwards says, "Hello, Richard." Hello, Vivian. No, I hadn't really pinpointed. I mean, I only heard this today, or was it yesterday? I think it was today, and it's just played on my mind about this woman who had a year in a forest and ended up with a book. And I thought, in this world that we're in now, a book's not enough, because all that writing could be made into a podcast, could be made into videos. Yes, it could be made into a book, could be a series of photographs, could be a whole lot much more. Yeah, that's English, isn't it? Could be a whole lot more, and would be a learning curve for me, and I would take books to read in the evening about what I'm seeing and look stuff up and share that sort of knowledge. That would be great. But also, the whole point would be that it's an immersive thing that people can join in. I mean, it would be what would be fantastic would be to have, I suppose, live hours where you could just join, not like this where it's a communication, but you could have like the old webcam things. Do people still do that, where they just leave a webcam on and people can just look in? And you could just look in to see what I was up to. Then I would do a thing in the evening, perhaps round a fire or whatever, and say, today I've been looking at this and blah, blah, blah. And, maybe if I had a laptop or something, I could edit it up. I think that the Bald Explorer needs to do some more focused videos. I mean, the walks and all that, that's the bread and butter, as it were. But some more interesting and focused things, getting into the landscape, getting down with nature, and heritage, of course. So that would be good. Let's have a look. John says a really nice place is Gumber Bothy. Oh yes, I've been past that actually. That's up near the Roman Road, isn't it? Opens in the spring, make a wonderful base for you and an overnight trip and local filming. That's very true. Probably a bit too local, that's the thing, because you'd be tempted, you could just nip home, couldn't you? Wild camping is wild camping, living in the wood with no power access, says Dean Cooper. Yes, I know, and I'm not suggesting that I actually do wild camping. It's not the camping bit that I'm interested in. It's the thing about is it's living in the environment. It's not the testing your ability to put a ground sheet down and not make a mess. That's not really what I'm interested in, and then move on. That's not what it's about. It's about I could be in a shed, I could be in a caravan, I could be in a camper van, or I could be in a tent. That I'm not trying to I'm not trying to sort of live like some nomad. That's really not what it's about. It's more about learning about the environment and looking at things, and actually looking at trees, looking at the plants around trees, the underwood, the canopy, the leaves, the creatures, the lichen, and all of that. And it's about sitting and waiting for something to happen. So it's not really about the wild camping as such. Clint Brooks says, "Hi Richard, watching from Shrewsbury." I was supposed to be up in Shrewsbury last weekend. Unfortunately, the weather was a bit grim and I didn't come up. I gather that Saturday wasn't so bad in the end, but thanks very much for tuning in. Jeff says, knocking together a 150-watt solar panel, oh, here we go, with a 12-volt charge regulator would be an easy task and would change everything quickly and silent, and would charge everything quickly and silently. That would be absolutely marvellous. Warren Scott Miller says, "Good evening, Richard. Are you still having your Brexit party show Friday?" Well, yes, sort of. It will be. I won't overly do this because I know there's going to be people. I don't want to upset too many people, and but yes, I'm going to celebrate the fact that because I just happen to think that's a good thing. But that's not what we're talking about in today's show. Ed Loud says, "The way Richard's hands are moving about looks like he is making a ball out of invisible Play-Doh." All right. Oh, yeah. For those that don't know, I did actually go to mime school many years ago in my 20s. So I can do all this stuff, the old mime routines. So my hands are quite flexible. Soil Searcher. He says, have you been to St. Leonard's Forest in Horsham? Lots of history there. From the famous wheeled iron history, I believe they're still mining sinkholes in the soil, still quite deep, from the 1500s. I have been there a couple of times. Obviously, it used to be a much, much bigger area than it is now. And we did a group walk actually with the Board Explorer group, where we had a bit of a walk. I think it was in February last year, if I remember rightly. So I haven't been up there fairly recently. But yes, I think what I want to be somewhere that I've got the permission to be there. I don't want to have to pay to be there, because I would hope that if somebody let me be in there for a week or 2 weeks or whatever it was, they would get something out of it. If it was tourism, for example, then it would be promoting the positive aspects of a wood, or something like that. Nigel Sadler says, field archaeology, learning how to read the landscape and how it has been manipulated by man. Exactly. Well, that's the sort of thing that I'm looking at. Francisco says, what's the point in that message? Shane Unknown does YouTube, says, love the railway video you've done. Are you a massive fan of abandoned stuff? That's an interesting question, actually, because I'm interested in what it was and the purpose it was used, and perhaps the state it's in now. I'm not so much interested in seeking it out for the voyeuristic nature of just seeking it out. There's a lot of videos out there that deliberately go and look for abandoned something or other, and to me it's just a bit voyeuristic. They're making YouTube videos, of course, and that's the primary function of anybody who's making a YouTube video, is they're either getting money from it, or they're getting an endorphin hit from it, or whatever it is. But I'd be much more interested to know, I mean, if I stumble across something, then that's one thing, but it'd be more interested to know why it's there, as opposed to going, wow, look at this, it's groovy, aren't we clever, we've found this and we're going upstairs on these dodgy floorboards, as you see some people do. I'm not really interested in any of that. So that's good. Sorry, I'm just going to sort this out. One moment. I've just removed, I don't know if I've removed him or I've removed the message deleted. Can I actually, there we go. The user's messages, I'm afraid I've just knocked out Daniel, because he's not really behaving like everybody else. So I'm afraid, I don't know if Daniel can see, but Daniel, we can't have that sort of behavior in here, just blitzing. We're having a nice quiet conversation, and I'm quite prepared. I do that with the YouTube videos, by the way. Sometimes we get some nasty comments, and I'm on it fairly quickly. I usually go through them once a day, but sometimes I'll go through them in the evenings as well. And any nasty comments or pointless comments, I generally just delete, because I can curate the comments, because I want people to have a nice experience when they visit, as much as one can make. Patrick Rose says the Scottish borders would be interesting. Absolutely, that would be another one. When I was up with Robert Croser in Cumbria, we ventured a little bit into... oh, Robert, you're still there. What's it? Dumfriesshire and... anyway, I can't remember whatever it's called now. Stupid, put the camera on me, rabbit in the headlights, brain goes empty. But we went in that area, and that borderland, I'm actually quite fascinated by borderland. The Welsh marches, for example. I've got some books. He looks up at a shelf up here. I don't think they're on here. Oh, no, hang on. There we go. Some books there, and some more books up there. In my office, there's plenty more books on the Welsh marches and places around there. Absolutely fascinating. And I love that sort of crossover. Dumfriesshire and Galloway. Can't say it. Yes. exactly. And that was beautiful with those wonderful hills. And I think that would be absolutely amazing, to live out there and explore all of that for a long time. Half of my comments are pointless, but you only got to tell me to shut up once. Now, Ed, your comments are worth it. You're not in the same league as the other person. All right, okay. Dean's just sent me a message. I completely agree, Dean. If you can hear this, I completely agree with you. It's not his fault. As such, he has. I don't know how to put this politely, really, but he has condition. But this is an area where we're all having a grown-up conversation, really. Clintbook says, I grew up in a place called Knighting on the Welsh. Oh, Knighting. There's another place, isn't there? Is it Knighting? No, not. There's another one that's like Knighting. Where is it near? Near the South Shropshire and Herefordshire border, but on the Welsh side. That would be good. Oh, in capital letters, Robert Croser says, discover Scottish borders on YouTube, people. Mark Incole, a friend of mine, runs it. Oh, that's the name of something. Oh, okay. Loch Eck in Scotland is stunning. Thank you, Dan. Yes, I mean, the thing is, there are just so many places and there's never enough time. Hang on, I'm just going to have a slurp of coffee. Entering abandoned homes. Let's just see what. I live in the Scottish borders. Discover Scottish borders on YouTube. Oh yes. Well done, Richard. Thank you very much. What else? Clint, I grew up in a place. Oh yes, Knight. I wonder if that's the same place that I'm thinking of. All borders are interesting. There's always tension. Yes, and I think that's. It would be interesting to do a series on different borders. Of course, we only have so many borders in the UK, but they would. I think it would all be fascinating. Knighton, there we are. Knighton, yes, Knighton. That's what I was thinking. Knighton. That's why I couldn't quite get it. I was thinking Knighting. Where's that? Knighton. Yes. No. The lovely place and a lovely clock tower in Knighton, and also the Offers Dyke. There's the Offers Dyke headquarters, I think. The Offers Dyke wildlife something or something like that to do with Offers Dyke, and you can head off along there if I remember rightly. Andrew Norris says absolutely, Wiltshire man. What's he saying? Unfortunately, fact of life, Richard, is that we all get a few trolls from time to time. The more successful you are, the more thumbs down you'll get. Just make sure the ratio of thumbs up is higher. Yeah, no. I mean, I don't want to be rude to Daniel. He's very enthusiastic. He does. It's not that he's a troll, and that it's unfair to say that. But he has a condition, as far as I'm aware. Just being very careful. I don't want to upset anybody. I don't know what it is, but he's not deliberately trying to be a nuisance, but it's when people are being a nuisance, you just, for the greater good, one has to sacrifice the weak. That was rather profound, wasn't it? Anyway, we'll move on from that. Knighton and Kingston, both near each other on the Welsh border. Oh, right. Knighton and Kingston. I don't know Kingston. Barbara Charles says Exmoor, Exford, Weedon Cross and surrounding villages. You see, there are so many bloody wonderful places to look at, and it's just tormenting. I think it's tormenting this time of year to be with the dreadful weather, and I get very frustrated because I want to bring you lots of interesting places. I do. The rain really precludes me making videos. It's not that I can't get out in the rain. I don't mind the rain. I used to walk in all weathers. Rain didn't matter. Waterproofs and all the rest of it. Very much like Wiltshire man, Sandy would say. But when you're filming, I mean, we did some filming yesterday, Julia and I, and it was only spitting. But the spitting got onto the camera lens and it it's just so frustrating because the tiny drop of water can just go all over the lens, and you might not see it when you're filming, and then you look at the rushes and it just looks awful. And I have a certain professional-ish standard that I want to keep to, and I do think it's important to do that. But dull, cold, whatever, don't mind. But January has just been so wet this month. It's been hard to sort of do anything terribly exciting. Robert Baxter says, yes, Knighton, I had to deliver to a farm there and went to Kingston by mistake, which is a bit further north. Those places. And again, if one could somehow meet the people and talk to them and get them to, loosen up and be on camera and stuff, I think this is becoming more and more possible now. I think 5-10 years ago, people were a bit nervous about being on, a camera. A lot of people didn't like to be on cameras. They were a bit superstitious, or they just didn't like themselves. But so many people, social media and talking to people over Skype and all of that, I think, has made people become a little bit more friendly to being on the camera, sort of thing. Up on Hurgist Ridge. Is it Hurgist Ridge? Is that how you pronounce it? Clint says went to school in Now, how do you pronounce that? Prestine? Is it Prestine, which was built in 1565, the second oldest in Wales? That's an interesting. Somebody wrote to me. I can't remember. I don't know if it was you, Clint. Somebody wrote to me and suggested there was this village that they wanted to tell me all about, and then unfortunately their father passed away, and they said, I'll get back to you in a couple of weeks. So I'm interested in that. David Kill says, yes, Hurgist Ridge. I will look out for that video, Robert. Sad news about Nicholas. Yes, John, it was sad news about changing the subject. Apropos of nothing. If I had my just a minute up. Yes, very sad news. But I was listening to the news, actually, just briefly diverting on to Nicholas Parsons, who was famed in my life. I remember him very vividly as the host of Sale of the Century, popping up into 1950s films that I would be watching as a kid. And even now, if a 1950s, 60s film comes in, and he comes in as this very tall, thin, straight sort of acting chappie. But of course, in more recent times, I think for 50 years, he was the host of BBC Radio 4's Just a Minute, which is an amazing feat, and probably is the longest running host of any panel show on radio, certainly. Tanya says that you were considering a camper van. I think that would do what you need. Yes, I am thinking about it. I'm thinking either a camper van or a small caravan that you can just dump. But a camper van would probably do what I would want to do. Oh, Prestatin. Is that how... Oh, okay, Prestatin. Thank you, Nigel. You know how rubbish I am at reading that. Let me just go back and look at the... You say I would never have got that because I was taught at school to read phonetically, and mostly I'm all right with it, but sometimes it lets me down. So Prestatin, I would never have got that from that. You see, when they use Y's instead of I's, that always gets me. And when they use G and N's and a silent G is very confusing. MC, hello, Mr. Bald. I'm a big fan from India. Hello, Mr. MC. Hello to you from down there in India. Well, it's down there, over there in India. What's the weather like? Or is that a silly question? I bet it's lovely. Thank you very much for watching all my nonsense. Sandy says apparently Nicholas Parsons was 96 and had a love of clocks. Yeah, clocks are fascinating things. Nigel says the voice star in one of the first Jerry Anderson productions, Four Feather Falls. Oh, was he? If you never go to Knighton or Prestatin, sorry, let me read that again, Clint. Prestine. You see, now he's saying Prestine. Here we go. If you ever go to Knighton or Prestine, no, I'm reading that. I've got some books here I was going to read to you, some bits and pieces. If you never go to Knighton or Prestine, Would love to be in the video. Oh, if you ever go there, Clint, we'll make it a date. It would be fantastic. You can take me around. You see, this is the other thing. I've got other things on here to talk about, which I haven't even got to those. And I was going to read some books. I probably won't get to the books this evening. How are we doing on the time? I only want to sort of make this an hour. I don't want to make this all night. Yes, one of the things that I absolutely love, I love doing them, going out on my own and making the videos and what have you. And some people say to me, oh, Richard, I prefer it when you're on your own, which is very nice and very, ego building. But I love it when there's somebody else who comes on the trips with me. And some people, one has a great rapport with, people like, like Robert Croser, who's out there, Kevin Hall, obviously the lovely Julia, Nigel Sadler's out there. Some people, you get on well with off camera as well and become mates, which is fantastic. And so that adds a certain levity to the videos. You can have a bit of fun, because I think it's very nice personally when I'm watching people that they are enjoying what they're doing, and you are seeing the scenery or learning about the subject, whatever it is, but also the people are enjoying themselves, and I think that's absolutely important. But also you get some people who they're nice people, but they're not necessarily going to be your bosom pals, and they've got their busy lives, but they know stuff about the place you're going to, and again, that would be great. So Clint, it would be fantastic. What's your email address? richard@vobes.com. richard@vobes.com. Vobes is spelt like that. Richard, I think you can work out. So that's all good. English Andy, good evening to you. Lovely to see you. We're just having a sort of chill out and a general discussion really about bits and pieces that I'm interested in doing, and just sharing some ideas with the audience. I stand correct, says Nigel. Ed Loud says, well, I'm back in my silly old 88 neighbourhood, just set fire to... Oh, your neighbour has just set fire to her rubbish bin. Yeah, life goes on, doesn't it? Normal service has resumed. An 88-year-old has just set fire to her rubbish bin. Oh, my goodness. Dean Cooper says, welcome to the so many new people here. Search out the Vobe show. Believe it's on tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Yes, I'm hoping the lovely Julie will be on the Vobe show. 73 viewers. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. This is fantastic. Nice to just chew the cud. One of the things I was aiming to do with this, with the live stream, I love books, and one of the things I wanted to do was to just read some passages and just engage with you a little bit, but try and share my love of the books, because these are books from different parts of the countryside stuff. But perhaps that's not really the appropriate thing. Maybe maybe I could read them and put them out as podcasts, and with a picture or something. Maybe that's the thing that I should do with that. I do think that live stuff is about interaction and talking to each other, which is fantastic. So this is going well. Let me go through some of the other notes that I had before my little hour. My hour slot is up. I have to go because I have a fire, a log burning stove, and I will need to put logs on it in the other room, and also the Essie Ironheart, which I have, which is heating the water so I can actually have a bath later on. If you were watching, I haven't got it in here actually, I've read a book called The Decline of an English Village by Robin Page, and he set up the CRT, which is the Countryside Restoration Trust, and they're trying to promote farming and rewilding as a joint thing. Farming in a more wholesome way, less intensive, one that supports wildlife and looks after wildlife and looks after the land and brings nature back, but also farming in a way that is of beneficial to humans. And I haven't been to Knepp, where they're doing some rewilding quite close, and I know there's a lady there who's written a book, somebody Tree, I think her name is, and I think I may have got this wrong, but I think their sort of rewilding is about just turning the land over back to letting nature do whatever nature does. And I think Robin Page's argument is that that's great as it goes, but actually we humans do have to live with nature, and farming is pretty much the most universal thing that we have done as soon as we stop being hunter-gatherers. And we have to respect nature, but we still have to sort of, use nature to survive. And that's very much what they're doing. Anyway, so they set up the CRT, and they're buying up land to stop land developers principally buying up the land and building on it. And they're trying to make these wonderful habitats not just for wildlife, but also for farms and things. And I've been in touch, and in March, I'm going to hopefully have an interview with Robin, but also talk to some of the tenant farmers and find out just how they're doing their farming land. So the first one is in Cambridgeshire. So I'm going to go up there at the beginning of March, I think it is, for 3 or 4 days and stay up there and just explore this whole thing and make some series of videos. So that's just being confirmed as we speak. Here we go. He read a book. Sorry, Richard, can't let it go. So much comedy material. I'll have to look through these comments if I'm missing any. Mr. Great Plum says there's a difficulty if you want the UK to be self-sufficient or if you want it to be less intensive farming. That is an interesting point, and I'm not in a position of knowledge to know how true that is. Hang on a minute. That is completely cold. And you're right, but how much of that intensive stuff are we selling overseas, and how much of it are we making for ourselves? These are questions that are very legitimate, and that I would like to put to Robin and the team to find out what their worldview is for less intensive, because we can't get rid of the environment that we're in because it impacts on us. Even if we take a selfish view and say, we're just going to look after ourselves as humans, well, we still need the diversity and the wildlife around us. If you kill too many of the insects, you're killing too much of the lower part of the chain. And if you take out one part, the thing gets out of balance and it will affect us. So, I'm not somebody who actually believes in the scaremongering of the climate change stuff. I think that what people are doing in the name of climate change, green electricity and less pollutions, is great. Long may they do that. But I don't think we're going to die or the world is going to collapse in 12 years' time. That said, though, but look at what they're saying is happening by burning all the fossil fuels and this, that and the other. If we become too intensive farming, then I think we're going to have problems. So we've got to somehow sort something out. Ramaboo's just arrived. Hello, Ramaboo. Andrew Norris says that this is a spontaneous Bald Explorer chat. Yes, it's not the Vogue show. This is just the Bald Explorer chat, just chin-wagging with the lovely audience who... I didn't want to advertise as such. I didn't even know I was going to do it until about an hour or so before the show, and I just rearranged the lights. Dan Weld says, do you live in West Sussex, Richard? Yes, I do. I live down in Worthing on the south coast. Nick Etherington, hi. Hello to you, Nick. Nice to see you. Sorry if I miss your comments. There's quite a lot of you for my normal audience, and I appreciate you all watching and tuning in. We're just sort of having general light-hearted chatter. Matthew says that having said what I just said, I prefer less intensive organic farming with wildlife diversity. Yes, of course. And I take your point. I mean, I take both sides of the argument. I was chatting to the lovely Julia the other day, and we were talking about hunting. Now, hunting foxes, talking about. And Julia is very much against hunting foxes, and I am against it. But Robin Page supports hunting. Now, there is a there's a weird thing that's going on at the moment in this modern world, that if somebody has one thing that you disagree with them about, people tend to now, it seems to me, and I may be wrong, they tend to then put them into a box of, well, oh yes, so in other words, Robin Page, he supports hunting. Well, I don't like him then. But that's absolutely... So my attitude is, I want to understand what it is about hunting that people still find is... I know we have legal things that we're not supposed to hunt, but we kind of do know that it is going on under the radar. And there's enough evidence to suggest that, I think. But I want to understand historically why hunting was done and why it became a pageantry. And then I want to understand why today, with the sophisticated ways that we could get rid of pests when we need to, and the more humane way we can do it, why we still want to turn these things, or that particular thing, into a sport, and why it's necessary to do it that way. So I am interested in looking at the opposite side of the story. So to go back to Matthew's point about the intense, I understand that we do need to have this intensive farming came as a need, because why else would we do it? But the question is, sometimes these things happen and we just accept them. We just go, oh yes, but that, it's being done on such a large scale, so it must be something we need to do. And we often don't question it because everyone's talking about it. It's like with this climate change, if you say you're not 100% sure that it really is what everybody says it is, you're told, well, you're a denier, you're an idiot, and you can't be part of society anymore, because for goodness sake, don't you know you're like a flat earther? And my attitude is, well, I want to just be sure, because we're often told a lot of things that's going to be doom and gloom, and all these things that tend to be the doom and gloom things tend not to actually be what they say they're going to be. The hole in the ozone layer never really happened. The millennium bug. We were told at one point there was going to be this massive ice age that was coming. So when it's these huge things and it's saying this is going to happen, I'm very interested to sort of go and question it and not just go along with it. I find that it's the same with a film. If everyone's like, I haven't seen 1917, and it's supposed to be an absolutely brilliant film. I haven't seen it, and I probably won't go and see it for a while, because I don't want to be told by the world and their brother that this is good and this is how I must think about it. I don't like people telling me how to think. I want to go and see something and see it on its own merit. So anyway, so that's that was that. The other thing, I was supposed to be up in Shrewsbury and then to Chester to go and do my drone flying. I've got my license, such as it is, and I've got this drone, and we just haven't had any decent weather. But I postponed the drone flying, and we're hoping to do that up in Chester. And I want to get the drone because I'd love to get some drone shots. So that will be something that's on the cards. We're coming up right to the end of the time. On the Board Explorer group, on our Facebook group, we do try... for those that don't know, there is a Board Explorer Facebook group, and it's called the Board Explorer Facebook group, funny enough. I don't get too involved in that myself. I've got the Board Explorer page, and I post my videos on there, and then there's the group, which is really for the fans and people who are interested in heritage, landscape and nature. And they can post their own pictures. They can comment on other people's pictures. You know how Facebook groups work. But the one thing that I try to do is to encourage people to get out and go to places and take original photographs, and also to take their own videos. And by doing so, we're building up a collection of heritage, landscape and nature videos. Now, Facebook is the most worst place for doing searches and archive and all of that, because it's just, I'd much rather we had the old forums that we used to, because you could do that. But YouTube is much, is far superior for that sort of thing. But there are a number of people who do like going out, and part of their enjoyment is taking perhaps their phone or a camera or whatever, taking pictures, but making videos. And I think it was last year or the year before, I tried to run a little course on how to improve your video making, particularly aimed at people who are doing landscape, heritage and nature. But basically you could have any reason to do it. And I'm thinking of doing that again, and I'm putting it out there if anybody is interested, and doing sort of masterclass, if you like. Now, I'm not saying that I'm the master of any of this, but I've been making videos pretty much all my life. The things I don't do is I don't deal with whizzy graphics and plugins and things and all of that. My stuff is about telling a story, and it can be the most simplest, and my videos are the most simplest story. I'm going from A to B. I'm starting here and I'm aiming to get there, and I'm going to describe what I see, and that's pretty much 90% of my videos, and that is it. But in order to do that, there's simple, not rules, I'm not going to say rules, but guidelines that can help you make it a bit more polished and make it easier on the eye. And half of the thing is you just want to, when you're watching a video, that it's easy on the eye, that you can see it and you can hear it, and it doesn't drag on, and you're not repeating yourself too much. That's really all I would be teaching. But it's amazing how the most simplest things sometimes take people a long time to learn. So I want to do a video improvement course with small groups, and if anybody's interested, they can, if you can email me, is probably the best way of doing it, richard@vobes.com. And later on in the year, when we can get reasonable weather, we'll just spend a day or 2 days or whatever it is, and we'll just try and I will try and one-to-one help people. I don't know if that would be useful. I'm just looking at the comments. I hope I haven't started off a hunting debate. That I was trying to use that as an illustration of the fact that I try to look at the other sides as well, even though I'm quite opinionated and I've got my opinions, and it takes a lot to change my mind, but I am open to listening to what other people say. When people's argument changes and they, instead of defending their argument, but they just call you names, they've lost the argument. They have no further thing. Andrew Norris says, Richard, absolutely, the story is everything. And yes, and it's, I did a couple of days with the lovely Richard Suggett, who does the Veg Grower podcast, and he was doing YouTube videos, and we were going through this, and I was trying to explain to him exactly that we're telling stories. And sometimes I think people expect this to be more complicated than it really is, and it isn't. My stories as such are very simple, and most YouTube videos are. If you're vlogging, it's an unfolding of your day or your visit somewhere or your opinion about something, and they may not be. Sorry about this, just fiddling with my itchy eye. They may not be. It may not be an action thriller with lots of this, that, and the other, but they may be just very simple structures about making it a little bit more interesting. I must take you down the Worth Way, Richard, and Worth Church. You must, Andy. I want people to get involved. I'd love more people to get involved and show me places and take me places. That would be fantastic. So that would be good. Michael, can I see both sides? I can see both sides of the hunting debate, says Michael. Yeah, and I, I genuinely want to find out both sides of some of these things. I'm off this Sunday, if the weather holds, to Horsham Drill Hall. Apparently that is under threat of being knocked down and turned into a community centre or something. So I'm going to meet the protesters about that. Again, I have done a couple of these protesting videos, and people, what I don't want the Bald Explorer to turn into is the go-to person who will make you a free video about, protesting, when I don't really know both sides of the story. And it is very difficult. It's very easy. I remember when I very first started I did some Bald Explorer lives before I started to do the Vogue show, and there was one lady who came on, and she was anti-fracking, and she was very. I would probably put her down as an activist. So she was very hard on anti-fracking, which so she asked me on the show, "What's your opinion of fracking?" And I said, well, to be honest with you, I don't know too much about fracking. I don't know whether, I can understand that people can be worried about it, but I also understand that there might be some good stuff. I don't know enough to have a informed opinion. And at that moment, I have to just sit on the fence. I can't say, I can understand it does seem like it's a dreadful thing. And, you're telling me all these bad things that happen, but I don't really know the other side of the coin, which is the side that nobody's particularly that interested in because people are making lots of money from it. But it may be that it is quite good. I don't know. But I would like to understand. Well, she took exception to that and then, stayed for a little bit pushing her point, realised that I didn't have time to, because I was making my videos about the stuff I'm interested in, and she pushed off. I've not seen her since. The point of raising that is that I don't really want, I don't want to be somebody who is shoehorned into protesting videos when I may or may not disagree with it. I'd like to know a bit more about it. However, but I am going to go and have a look at the drill hall and see what their grievances is. I may agree with them, I may not. But of course, one needs to listen to the councillor's point of view. I am slightly biased in that way because I don't like land grab. I think we've built on enough of the land. We need that land. That's my thought. John Railton is another chap who's been on the Bald Explorer. He's very much into how do I put this without making it sound really odd? He's into sort of ethereal stuff. He's a bit of a tree hugger, and he's sort of, I guess, pagan, I suppose. I don't really know. But there's some development going on, I believe, or planned to go on at Pagham, in Pagham Harbour. I don't know too much about this, but the Canadian geese, I think, are being threatened, or a certain type of geese are being... I don't know. Again, I don't know. I'm going to go down and find out. Need to find out a bit more about what's going on. I don't have an objection to helping and making videos in these areas if it's highlighting genuine plight. But I think one has to be very careful. One has to tread very carefully because one can get tarnished by activism that is working in a way that it doesn't sit comfortably with me. I don't know if that makes sense. Let's just have a quick look at the comments because you've made some fantastic comments and I've been waffling. I will go and read these afterwards. Andy English says Worth Church is Anglo-Saxon. Oh, Worth Church. Wait a minute, that rings a bell. Sorry, that was a bad pun. I didn't mean even to say that. Yes, I would love to go around. Yes, Worth Church. Yes, please take me around there. I'd be interested to see that. Martha Evans says the author Surtees gives us picture of the rise of hunting and chase for the middle-class bourgeois. See the illustrations via Google Images. Thank you very much. We'll have a look at that. Vivian Edward says, yes, Richard, please do a video on Worth Church. I was married there and my dad's ashes were scattered in the churchyard. It would really mean a lot. Yes, if Andy English, or even English Andy, would take me around, that would be fantastic. Email me, please, richard@vobes.com. That's the best thing. Comfy fellow, fox hunting is cruel but part of English culture. Now that, absolutely, I would agree totally with that statement, particularly the last part. It is part of English culture and we can't whitewash it away, but I don't know too much about the reasons for doing it these days and what people get out of it. But what I have witnessed is it does seem very cruel, not just to the fox, but to pretty much every damn other animal involved. And I just think in this modern day, it's an anachronism. Dean Cooper says, I'm going to shoot a video of my local fox who is very tame. I put food out for him and he's getting to know who I am. It's fantastic. Don't shoot the fox, though. Just shoot the video. Julia says, culture has a habit of changing, and why hasn't this part? Well, that's right. You know, we're all forced to change all the time. Change is so rapid at the moment that some people, you know, change is very hard for people, and I find it hard. And I used to laugh when my dad couldn't operate the VHS video recorder and work out how to put it on timer. I used to laugh at him. And now, of course, you've got these apps that do all these amazing things, and people say, "Oh, have you tried this?" Or "Have you tried?" And you're going, "Oh my goodness, you know, I no." And you think, "Am I getting to the point that my dad was in, where you're resisting change?" I think younger people, particularly millennials and younger, are living in a world that's changing so fast. They're so used to change. But I'm a kid of the 60s and 70s, and I'm used to change, but not at the rapid speed that it is. You know, I'm still getting to the grips with what an ordinary phone can do with a touch screen on it. Never mind all these Fitbits and this, that, and, you know, implants and goodness knows what. John says it's certainly English, late Saxon, almost completely Saxon, some of the church of importance. Yes, I'm actually reading some book. I mean, I'm try to read loads of books on English architecture and Saxon architecture, so that when I'm going around churches and old buildings, I'm a little bit more able to communicate about it. I wonder if any of this is still... Did I pour out the second cup? Oh, no, I didn't. I might get a second cup. I'm going to have to go. Because I've got to put logs on the... It's a lame excuse, but that is my excuse. Sorry about my brother said hi. That's okay. Clint says, I've sent you an email. Thank you so much. Andrew says, sorry, I've got to go. Night, everyone. Yeah, I've probably got to go. The me generation, says Anthony Hartley. Probably agree with that. We need older people to put the brakes on change sometimes. I think that's a very sensible sentence that you've written there. A lot of old people get dismissed, I think, because they are old. And yet what we forget is they've got all this wisdom. And, you know, before they get dementia and it disappears, and I know exactly what that's like because my dad had dementia before he died, or died as a result of it as well, they do have a lot of wisdom. It may be out of date in terms of the technology and stuff, but a lot of that humanistic wisdom is very, very important and worth listening to. Richard, buy a book by Mike Salter, very good on churches. I'm going to write that down. Mike Salter. I've been reading one by Hugh Braun. It was written in the 1940s, but I do like older books, you see. Mike Salter. I'm writing that down as we speak. Church books. There we go. Julia says, thanks for a great show, Richard. That's my pleasure. Clint says, good night, Richard. Good night, everybody else. Whatever happens to the elders? Whatever happened to them? Well, you know, they're all in care homes now, aren't they? Shut up, locked up, and don't say anything or you don't get dinner. And that's the way it seems to be. Speaking of Fitbit, before I realised what it was, someone asked me, have you got a Fitbit? And I replied, well, my shoulders are quite strong. Face palm reset. On that note, thank you for that. Thank you for joining me tonight. That's been very kind. I haven't got around to reading these. I wanted particularly to read you a little bit of H.E. Bates, Into the Woods. H.E. Bates, a beautiful writer, very poetic writer. I was going to read a little bit about Sussex Downs by someone called Frederick Wood, which he talks about poaching with dogs and from 100 years ago, which was quite fun. It was more rambles from Willow Farm. I've recently bought this book on poachers' tales, which is quite interesting and quite amusing. There's some bits and pieces in there, and various other things. But We can do that another day. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your comments. I can go and reread them now. Linda Kane says, hello and good night. Didn't get a notification. Linda, I don't know quite why that was. I don't know how YouTube works, and I'm sorry about that. This was an impromptu one, bit of a test. Want to try and keep this up perhaps once a fortnight, something like, I don't want to do it every week, but once a fortnight, little chat, impromptu chat, just sort of catch up with what's going on. If anybody wants more from me and becomes a patron, which means you basically, the price of a cup of coffee or something like that a month, I will send you my podcast, which is a daily podcast called The Naked Englishman. It's called The Naked Englishman because it's me not performing. So it's a sort of stripped down, unlike when I first set it up, I was doing a podcast called The Vogue Show, which was a very over-the-top, silly show with lots of sound effects and comedy voices and entertainment. And I was taking stuff in the news and just going to town with it and mucking about, really. It wasn't anything special. And some people wanted a sort of more behind-the-scenes type thing. And I thought, okay, I'll do a stripped-down version. And I thought, okay, stripped down, naked. And of course, I'm very proud of being English and an Englishman. And so hence Naked Englishman became the name of this podcast. And that's what it is. It's really the audio diary of my life. I record it every day, about 10 minutes a day. And it tells you pretty much what I'm up to. Sometimes I use it as, like a confession, if you like. It's a bit of therapy. Sometimes I'm just getting things off my chest. Other times I'm having a rant. Other times it's very perfunctory. There we are. And it's just sort of just me, going through the motions, telling you what's coming up and what's not coming up. But anyway, if anybody would like to do that, again, to become a patron, go to baldexplorer.com. I should make a little thing. Next time I will. I'll have a thing that can come up on the screen. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for tuning in. I can just flip no, I can't. Why won't that flip up? Will that flip up? No, it won't. Why doesn't that go up? That's very interesting. I thought I had a... That doesn't go up. I've got a button here that's supposed to put a thank you for watching screen on, but that's not working, so I'll just have to say it. Thank you for watching. That's really weird. I wonder if I can do it now. Nope, it's definitely not working. All right, thank you very much. Take care, one and all, and I will catch up. If you want to watch the Vogue show, there'll be a live show tomorrow with the lovely Julia on the Vogue show on YouTube. Just search the Vogue show. Very different thing. Good. So that's it. I shall say good night, and I shall turn off by putting the webcam on yourselves. So there you are. That's the studio. Good night, all. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.